Tamara Banks. Here. Jason Broughton.
Here.
Ruby Bravo. Dante Braden.
Oh, here.
Joe Brito. Michael Patel. Justin Chenault. Harley.
Here.
David Bouth. Denise Flatley. Glenn Goldsmith. Larry Gross.
Hey.
Rebecca Herron. Ryan Herbert.
I'm here.
Yolanda Hipsky.
Here.
Michael Hoyt. Sandra Group. David McLaughlin.
Here.
Jimmy Morris.
Here.
Aria Nair.
Here.
Ken Pogue. James Powell. Ronnie Thomas. Alan Watkins.
Here.
Wells. Timothy Welsh. Right, and Chair, we have
Excellent. We have two new members, and I just wanted to just take a few minutes to recognize them. Dante Braden is here. Would
Howdy.
you like to tell us about yourself?
Oh,
Interesting.
so certainly. Howdy, y'all. I'm Dante Braden. I have the privilege of representing Spotsylvania County. My mantra is that I'm young and learning, and I understand, having served already on the Parks and Recreation Commission, that there is a bit of a learning curve, and I'm looking forward to learning from all of you and then working together with all of you. And I'm ecstatic for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me.
We also have Ryan Herbert. He's online. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ryan. It's bothering. I have the honor to be here, appointed by Lori Hayes. I took a little while of bothering her to get me here, but I'm excited for the opportunity myself. Like to see Spotsylvania do better, I guess.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you both for joining us and introducing yourselves. The next item on the agenda is approval of the March 11th CTAC agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
You have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any against? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved. Next item is the approval of the February 4th, 2026 CTAC minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Is there a
Jason, I second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes passed. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak with us today? Anybody online?
Correspondence.
nothing to read.
All righty, then moving right on, the next item on the agenda is the VDOT and transit report a problem. Anybody have a problem on VDOT that they'd like to report? Any reports back?
Just ran an LO3 application, smart vehicles, so qualities that are working to get paid on time. Yeah.
This moves.
You see the first time I'll report it, not a problem.
Oh, awesome. That's great. We're just gonna need the other one to do.
Chair, I don't know if this is a problem. Question. Chair can answer it back to us. I'm just curious as a citizen. Right. Seems to be taking so long. Fall Hill Avenue.
Oh,
Like, just seems to be going on wrong.
yeah.
If you have like anything that we have construction or schedules, it kind of depends on what we have, when the funding's available, all that kind of dictates of the timeline, if there's any right away issues, all of that becomes a reason for any delays or.
And you're talking, I think what they're doing is putting the curb and guttering along the road and it's for a couple of miles. There might be some utility, relocation. I think that I drive that way and that's I saw. But I'm not a traffic parent, I defer to anybody else who has any ounce of knowledge on it because it's more than I have. Any other? Next item on the agenda is action discussion items. The first item is the Transfer Go presentation to the CTAC committee. We welcome Melanie Fowler, Director of Public Transit and Transportation.
Good evening, I'm Melanie Feller, I'm the director for Fredericksburg Regional Transit, also known as FXAGO. Previously, it was known as FRED for a lot of people. So I want to give you a quick system overview of what encompasses Fredericksburg Regional Transit. So currently we have our region, we were founded in 1996, so this year is our 30th year. That is around the end of November, but we're looking to do our celebration in October, so look for news on that coming soon. We offer deviated fixed routes. We currently have 16 routes and 30 buses, and in fiscal year 25, we had over 300,000 riders. Our core hours are 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. And this past week, we just announced to the public that 5 of our routes, we are starting an hour earlier because that was one of the things in our transit strategic plan. People said they wanted the most was earlier routes. So currently we provide services to the city of Fredericksburg, Stafford County, and Spotsylvania County. However, safety is very important for our riders and our operators. And I see Tamira's here from Healthy Generation. She helps FXAGO out with doing travel training for our buses, which is a huge help for us. So all of our buses now have driver barriers in them, and we have cameras inside our buses and outside of our buses to provide a safer trip for both our riders and if there's an accident or anything else. We also have 2 full-time and 1 part-time security officer and patrol at Central, and this helps to help the public feel more at ease and safe. And we do have our security officers right on the buses too. We have 3 facilities: our operations, our maintenance facility, and also our central location, which is kind of our hub where everyone gets on all of our buses. Next slide. So our ridership in fiscal year 27 is yellow. This is slightly outdated. It only went to November. Our ridership in December was higher. January and February, it was a little bit lower due to all the ice. We had to close our buses quite a few days in there. And March is looking like it's recovered. I was at the bus station today. It was packed. Next slide. So we have a public transit advisory board. And so with this, we meet 7 times a year for our transit advisory board. Their input really helps us to make decisions on what we're going to do with our buses, whether it's new routes, new ideas, so that CTAC really helps bring new ideas and thoughts to our transit agency. Some of our members include the state of Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania County, Stafford County, Mary Washington University, Healthy Generations, Germany Community College, Mary Washington Healthcare, Fredericksburg Area Chamber of Commerce, GWRC, FAMPO, and the Disability Resource Center, with some others that join us. So we had our transit strategic plan. One of the things that was most fascinating to me after we got our survey back was I was really surprised. The majority of our riders are actually either full-time or part-time workers. A lot of times people think riding our buses are not working, which is not the case. We actually have a lot of people come in their, if they're going, their scrubs, going to the hospital, or they might be going to gas stations, Walmart. So we actually provide a lot of service to people to getting to their jobs. So by starting our service earlier, it's really helping people to get to their jobs. So our trip purposes, the biggest one, 45% told us their number one reason for riding was to get. 18% said it was to run errands or go shopping, and 8% said they were going to medical or dental appointments. And most of our riders reported that their income was under 40% or 40,000. And what we found also from it was that the most requested service was additional weekend service and also earlier hours, which we've increased. Next slide. So FX to Go is, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to start our routes, 5 of them, April 13th, I think it is. They're starting earlier now. We recently went through a rebranding in 2023. So we now have the FX to Go logo on all of our new buses. We currently still have 7 that are the tan old red buses, but by July, we should have all new branding buses out on the road. And as I mentioned, we completed our transit strategic plan in June of 24. And one of the recommendations was to update our routes. So real quick, I want to no, that's fine. Yes, that's it. Okay. So one thing we did with the transit strategic plan, it was in 3 phases. The first one was we worked with Kinley Horn and they helped us gather information. The second phase was conceptualizing, and the third phase was drafting the plan. So our goal as an agency is we really use the transit strategic plan to follow as a guide of what routes to improve, what service is needed, and we're using it as a step-by-step guide for how to improve our service. Next slide. Yep. So currently we have a bunch of different projects in progress. We have our transit sustainability innovation study. We're looking into Saturday service. Our new Gillig buses arrived. And so we have a bunch of projects that we're constantly always working on. This slide shows our transit strategic plan. And what we are trying to do is we've been working to follow route readjustments in all 3 of our locales. So we started in Fredericksburg, then we went to Spotsylvania, and just January 5th, redid our routes in Stafford County. So for this, when we worked with the transit strategic plan with Kinley Forum, there were 17 events, which included 2 pop-up events, 2 transit operator events, and 13 ride-along to get comments from the public on the new route alignments. Next slide. So this is specifically Stafford County because January 5th is when this all went live for Stafford. So we have found that our most popular destinations in Stafford County are the 2 Walmart stores and also the Stafford courthouse location. We've also changed the names. They used to be D1, D2, D3, D5, and D4, and now they're numerical, so they're 20, 21, 20. And people seem to really be appreciating the numbers changes. We've had a lot of feedback saying that they really enjoy, because people would get confused between the D's and the S routes and the F routes where they were going. So the numerical has really helped people with our routes. Next slide. So in the summer of 2025, we got 2 new Gillig buses in. So these are each 35-foot buses, and these came from grants that we've received, and we just started testing them in March this month on the routes. So they've tested, I think, on 6 routes so far. You might see them in Stafford, Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, are some of our new buses. Next slide. And this is a quick video. So, moving on to questions. And so,
These new buses, are they electric buses?
no, they're not, they're diesel.
Why not?
We don't have the infrastructure currently at the facilities for electric. It is something we are looking at, with the, sustainability. We are definitely. But one thing I do want to add, if you put one of these buses with a ton of people, you're gonna be saving how many different cars on the road? The comparison is huge. So even though they are not electric, just having a bus, public transit really does save the environment a lot.
Yeah, I recognize that. I hope you don't think I'm ignoring you. My hearing's bad, so I'm reading what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
On your first slide, you mentioned paratransit.
Yeah, we don't do paratransit.
I'm not too clear what that is exactly.
Sure, paratransit is more where they will go to serve it. Healthy Generations doesn't do paratransit, but it's more similar. You will go to someone's house to pick them up if they are in like a wheelchair or walk. Is more specific, and we don't do that. We do fixed routes, and we'll deviate off our route like a mile and a half to pick someone up.
So this changes a mile and a half now?
I might be.
No.
3/4 of a mile plus.
Yes, that's.
3/4, so 3/4 plus 3/4 mile and a half.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
3/4 of.
I was thinking
No, that hasn't changed.
I was hoping.
My operators will be mad at me.
Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. I see on one of your slides, you have a transit strategic plan.
Yes,
And a lot of the routes look like they've changed. They're either changing or expanding, and
yes.
probably as routes usually do when they're thing and whatnot. Are y'all in the are y'all in the process of figuring this out, or is this what the
Implemented. So we implemented Fredericksburg last year, we implemented Spotsylvania last year, and Stafford went live January 5th this year. So they've all been changed, and all of the way we changed it was what our riders told us they wanted. We also, we saw that a lot of them wanted Walmart in Stafford right away. So before we even did that, we immediately added that because that wasn't too far from our route. So we're always trying to listen to our riders to tell us what they want and need and try to meet their needs.
So when y'all consider routes, is it normally surveys that you do, or is it nested within like a regional, like you have to talk to folks outside of customers to figure out where you're at?
Website, we put it all over. I think FAMPO shared a survey. We also had ride-alongs because the people riding the buses, we really want to hear their input, where they want to go. So we had ride-alongs at all of our buses. We had pop-up events at various locations just so we could get that input, where they want to go and how they want to get there.
Great, thank you.
So I moved from a place that had a heavy public transit infrastructure, and they all had the truck. How is this model versus Beavis? How is it funded?
So previously we had a trip grant from DRPT. And so currently that grant expired in, I think, February 2022. So we will be, we're reevaluating whether we go back to fares in the future or not. But currently we are still fare free.
Oh, so 2 questions. On one of the slides, when we broke up some of the data, like by income,
Yeah.
and race was one of the categories, we seem to have an equal amount of driver or people riding the bus who are white and black. But then I saw 8% other, if I recall correctly. Are we classifying Hispanics under white/Caucasian or under other?
So it was how people would fill it. They chose to fill it out. So I don't know
Oh,
how
okay.
people chose.
And the only reason I ask that is because I know the census, right, will consider Hispanics part of white, but sometimes there's different needs in different groups, right? Like I happen to know English and be born, just into that, but other people might not have that, and being understanding of what it looks like getting the word out to those communities. And then
One of the things to that is we do have one of our customer service representatives who she is Hispanic, so she speaks it fluently. So she's able, if people have questions, to help them out with routes or different information. In addition, when we post information online, we usually try to alert stuff posted in both languages to try to help that.
Oh, awesome. That's great to hear. And then my second question was, I understand that y'all are reevaluating keeping it feeless, and if we are to continue doing that without a grant, I take it we'll probably need all the localities, like for instance, the ones here that do benefit to chip into that. And I guess maybe this is a statement of my support for that, because I'm looking at that data too, and I'm seeing that the people who are getting the most use from this amazing service are those who are making under 20,000 or those who are making under 40,000. And those are the last people we should be charging fees to access economic opportunities. So however, I can help you advocate for that, or I'd be more than happy to, because I think it's very important that we remain feeless for driving.
What Walmart are you referring to, Sam?
So we stop at 2 Stafford locations. We have stops at both.
Which ones?
We have one, okay, not gonna say them probably correctly. There's the one right when you go over by Ferry Farm.
Yeah.
And then we have one out, I believe it's the past guy.
Okay. 17. Also, what's the cost of going feeless? What would be the current revenue?
Yeah, so currently what we, because we didn't get this DRP to grant, what we did was internally, we have absorbed the costs for the next. So we internally cut different stuff internally to make it stay fare free at the moment. But we also get funding back from the federal government for being fare free this moment, so for our ridership. And we also get increased state funding for merit funding by being fare free. We have larger ridership numbers, which gives us, we get additional funding. So
But you don't have a dollar amount?
I do, but I don't know it on the top of my head, so.
If we can get that to the group. It's just a couple 100,000 divided up and locality.
Like that, yeah.
Much, but especially if we can get King George and Caroline for that.
Sure.
To go fare free is actually more economical than to have a fare box.
Yeah.
Because with a fare box, you have to have the equipment, the technology, the people, and the time. And remember, if something goes wrong with that fare box, that bus has to go out of service. That takes time off the route and the time. I am for fare free because it does increase ridership and it gives the transit company opportunities to actually expand because of the fare. I would love to see Caroline, King George come on board. Y'all already know my opinion on that, but keep it fare free. The more people ride, even if you're just riding from one stop to another, that's still ridership. And if we all banded together and show DRPT and the other powers that be that we are riding and we're riding more, that'll help get more money for merit, all the other grants and the trip to keep it fare free, which increases not only just ridership, but it actually grows the communities. Because more people want to come to places that's accessible. So fare free, people ride, we get bigger communities.
I agree with you, Ms. Banks, and I think that when I see bigger buses, I also think that the reach can also be expanded. And maybe there's a potential, I know District of Columbia has a model where it's fair, but if you're elderly, which many people earning under that threshold might just be elderly and out of work, students, other folks who are, we as a community decide might need either fare restricted, the potential to grow that sustainably with an economic model, but also benefiting those that might need it the most. So I don't know if there's a avenue to move forward with, like, hey, we've got these new buses and they're great and we're growing, because congestion continues to be a problem. So I'm sure it's something that we can nest with what we do here and make everyone's life better.
Yeah, just ride.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to ride, please reach me. But no, it's basically, it's about ridership. The more people that ride, but because of the stigma, and that's like a years and generational old stigma of the buses, people aren't riding. So I'm really glad to see these numbers. But we all have to take it, especially with this committee. Just get on the bus and ride the Eagle Express. Everybody know I love the Eagle Express. You park at the Giant, you ride all over downtown, you save that $250 ticket for parking somewhere you're not supposed to park, and just go back. And the Eagle Express, it stays until 11:30. So once everybody kind of know the bus system, knows where to go, because I get a question, like, how can I get to DC using the Fred bus? Jump on the Fred bus, get on the VRE, go down. It's just easy if everybody just kind of use it and just understand how to use it. As for what we do, at Healthy Generation, not a shameless plug, we kind of supplement their system by not being a paratransit system, but being a demand response, which basically they call up, they get a schedule, we pick them up from their homes, we take them to doctor's appointments and other places that they don't normally get to. We also have something called ARCH, which helps out Fred Transit. If you can't get to the bus, we pick you up from your home and take you to the closest bus stop, and that's actually been working. But we got to get the word out. We actually got to go off my soapbox.
I would say I've been watching what China is doing with technology, and they have nearly 500,000 electric buses. And they could actually hook them up to the grid and power the grid if need be. But anyway, they also have these rubber tire bus trains that work out really well for them. It's basically like 3 buses towed together like a train. And they work very well. The thing that's beneficial about rubber tires is you don't need specific tracks for them or a specific right of way. So it's constantly being used, and it's safer because you can't turn a train. Somebody jumps in front of you, you can't turn the train, but you can to rubber tire. That was one reason why get away with a lot of the rail cars.
But there are other ways to be sustainable at so we do activities, mobile vehicles that takes people that our drivers use to get to and from. We also are part of a green program with all the energy at our facilities, all supplied through and are some green source of energy. So we are looking at other ways to be sustainable as a
I'd like to also add what Tamara had talked about with the fare free. I think the fare free started during the pandemic, and it really took off. And that's what a lot of localities are finding, that it's cheaper for them to not charge fees and not have those fare boxes and just provide free fares, bus fares. And it does become an equity issue. I mean, we want to make sure that everyone has access to transportation. I could talk hours about healthcare transportation. I will not, but it's especially on-demand healthcare transportation. Pardon? Oh,
Just say that there's study
Thank
that
you.
you got presented a few years back about basically benefits of not having like fares for drive and everything. Jamie Jackson, sent each year. I think that would kind of help prove your point of not having, fares for these rides and everything, and actually it reduces like the cost and everything. Study. Oh, but, yeah.
How about a donation box? People can help contribute, like it.
The only thing is then we still have to collect, count, and staff time. So I mean, it's definitely an idea we can look at though.
sorry for overlooking you. I didn't realize. But I would like to also add one thing about the maybe something to help out with the fees is does FedEx buses go to like special trips to like for economic and I'm thinking like the new Kalahari, I don't know if I got it right. Kalahari place. I mean, they're going to need employees down there.
Spotsylvania County does have a put in for a STARS smart scale project to have a route go.
Okay.
That is in.
Okay, great.
I think they housed a lot of their employees there.
Oh, okay.
That was part of the contract.
Yolanda, may I ask a question?
Please.
Melody, I was wondering if there's like a way to know which routes the Gillig buses will be tested on as they're going out?
I can let you know when one's going out if those tell you, but it's a lot of times it's that day. And our driver trainer has been the one going out with different drivers or operators or supervisors. So last week he went out one time with some of the managers, and this week he went out with another dispatcher and another supervisor. They're getting them out, testing the routes to make sure all the turns are safe and everything's ready before we put the drivers in them.
Miss Ella, where exactly is the Gillig? So where, like, do you have like a route, a demo route or anything that's already, or we could just give it general?
It's just we're trying all routes. So there, you'll see them all over.
I'll definitely email you. I'm definitely interested in riding.
What I asked.
And one last thing, since VDOT's here, I know that there was a smart scale project done along Route 1 and near the transit center. There's not a lot of like multimodal access routes to the transit center. And I'm wondering how much is that going to be? I'm assuming that's going to be addressed in the smart scale project that's there. Understood.
We are doing a smart scale parking lot. We're working with DOT with that. And it will be a commuter parking lot so people can, park there and get on the buses at the station easier. We are looking to have 2 electric charging stations there for people to charge their cars. So. And I think that's supposed to occur in fiscal year 20.
When's that going to occur?
Fiscal year 20.
20. Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, I can't remember if this was going to be me or you, John.
I have it on me to set up, and I think you're going to take over for this. Okay, so in our previous meeting, we had a presentation on the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, and during that discussion and the presentation, it was acknowledged that there was a previous memorandum of understanding between the jurisdictions and the National Park Service about it was a 5-year MOU, basically designating a route, and the benefits of this would be that if we, and this MOU ran out in 2022. In between their, they had a gap in their superintendents, and I don't know if it was noticed by the jurisdictions, but the one particular benefit that we discussed at our last meeting was that this could potentially open up additional resources as far as studying or making additional actions if we want to revisit looking at regional trail networks and leveraging the National Park Service as a partner for some of those trails. So if you notice the policy committee agenda that went out just a few hours ago, they're looking to potentially take up this idea or revisit the MOU. And we have on our agenda, because it was actually happening a little bit before, this is actually something that actually the CTAC has been actually bringing to the policy committee's attention, is if you want to make a group recommendation to the policy committee to revisit, not necessarily to adopt or reject, but revisit and study and direct staff to look back into it, of reestablishing this MOU in relationship with the National Park Service. And or if you want to extend that to any other regional or national trail like the Rochambeau Trail, if we want to include King George and the Dahlgren Heritage Trail, we would actually have to kind of hand this back off to our parent organization, GW, George Washington Regional Commission, because they are the 5-county jurisdiction. But this is something that the FAMPO board is looking at, and we wanted to bring it back to the CTAC, or bring it to the CTAC to make a formal recommendation, since this is actually the place where that kind of discussion started. So I'll hand it off to Yolanda about anything else you would like to add.
Yeah, so yeah, we had a pretty good presentation last month, and I know that Denise had talked with had talked about that trail going through King George. This is this moment is very timely for us to pick up this mantle because I know that the trail is pretty much getting completed. Is about 85 to 90% planned and funded north of us in, Prince William County, Fairfax and all that. I don't trust those numbers at all, but we're working on that. I know in Prince William County, they're working on it very well. This is the time to start bringing it down here if we wanted to do that. This is also the 250th anniversary, so it would be a nice way to kick off the 250th sesquicentennial. Thank you. Yeah.
I had a whole bunch of.
Flashcards. But this might be a good time to bring it forward. So I'm it's up for a discussion.
We see the routes.
Well, this is the previous MOU that was adopted. So it wouldn't necessarily be those exact routes because I don't know what has changed since 2017, but it would be something probably similar or very close to those routes. So
There's like a 330-foot power line easement through Stafford, north and south. And the reused water system is going to be built on that easement. So my suggestion would be if we're going to run a trail, that would be the perfect spot, especially after they put that water line easement down. That would save, because you really don't want to run it up Brook Road, Route 1. The cost is going to be extremely high. And the impact on landowners is going to be high. Start crossing driveways and entrances to businesses, moving utilities. So if we're going to have that on basically virgin ground, that's already in an easement. And since the county is going to be responsible for the water, the sewer line, but not for the sewer line, reuse water line, I think that would be the best alternative for running. Actually goes all the way to Government Island, near Government Island parking lot. So from there, I don't know up north, but anyway, it's fairly easy to do from Stafford to Government Island.
Question. So right now, you're asking us if we want to start talking, right?
Make a recommendation that the FAMPO policy committee undergoes a discussion, direct staff resources towards that.
You're asking us if we should recommend that somebody decides to talk about. Okay.
I know it's convoluted, but that's where we are right now.
I'm just clarification, and then it's been an entire month, so I think I've data dumped. This is like a la PCT, that kind of a thing, like a through state trail line.
Correct.
Cool. Yes.
Educate me. We have a sister committee, the VPAC. What is our relationship in this issue with them?
I mean, it's a
Does it have
sister.
to be?
Oh,
Aren't they staff more?
so yes. So
There is a representative on BPAC who is with the Association of the Potomac Heritage Rail.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Yes, Jim Lynch is a member on our bicycle and pedestrian committee, and he's like Friends of the Trail. He's a part of that association, and represents them, and he also represents the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail. But no action has formally been taken by that committee, I would say.
they are not a citizens group. They do have citizens on their committee, but they're primarily a interjurisdictional staff and organizational committee. So for members like Fred Trails, the Doggone Heritage Trail. I'm trying to think of a few others. They're the individuals who make up that committee. This is a citizens committee, so it's kind of a different perspective on it. They are aware that we're having this discussion, but they also meet every 2 months. They just had their March meeting, but they won't meet again until May. And this is something that has basically originated at this committee, that it looks like the policy committee is now going to put on their agenda of whether or not they want to take action and revisit the MOU. So it's outside of our current kind of scoping with what FAMPO does. So anything that happens, we'll need direction from the policy committee to start looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Dante.
So, just for some clarification, the MOU originally did not include King George as much as maybe it could currently now. Did I hear that correctly?
Actually, the previous MOU included King George, and interestingly enough, it's actually one of our committee members who's absent, who's the chairman of King George Board of Supervisors at the time. So we kind of missed an opportunity there, but no, that they have been a previous partner in this effort, at least with the MOU and the National Park Service previously.
Okay, so what exactly would we be updating in the MOU? Is there like any pressing like new developments that have since like?
So when the MOU expired, they have specific National Park Service superintendents, basically those responsible for it. And at that point in time where it was vacant, or sorry, at that point in time the MOU expired, it was vacant, and there really was no kind of administrative capacity on their level to revisit, sign. I don't know exactly their mechanism, so, but that was my understanding from the presentation last month, and that they now have a new superintendent who is active. So if it is something we want to pursue, this is kind of the right time where you have somebody who's active in the position, as well as previous local support. It would be something that we would just need to update to reflect kind of 2026 versus 2017.
Okay, so it's like reaffirming our commitment to it. Well, I'm definitely in support of that.
I would add the same, I think, hearing. See this and having particular position now filled. In policy.
And I really think that this timing of this is perfect, because the trail is barreling down Prince William County. We're trying to make the connection at Stafford, at Quantico. I know that they've actually talking, but Stafford's talking about a smart scale project there to help with that. And we're trying, we being Prince William County is trying on that side. We're here at the 250th anniversary. Let's kick it off. The Potomac River was our historic highway. I mean, that's before we had roads, before we had the rivers and the creeks were our highways. The Rochambeau Trail, that is General Rochambeau and George Washington coming down to Yorktown. I cannot think of a better kickoff for a 250th anniversary to have it completed by 20 what is it, 1791, when the Constitution was signed. 250 years from that, which is too much math for me tonight.
Yeah.
It's a minute away.
So being that the policy board meets this coming Monday evening, what we're asking is for us to actually make the recommendation at that meeting.
Correct.
So we would need to either write something up or have someone present.
Yeah, I have it on my calendar.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
So he's making a motion.
Yes, but as far as how it ever gets written up, we don't have that in hand right now. So
Oh, we should have probably done that before. Do we want to just, how should we do that? Do you want?
Well, actually, we can use the wording that's on the agenda. So we are looking for the CTAC to make a recommendation to the policy committee to explore renewing the memorandum of understanding with the National Park Service for the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. Pause. And then I'll add, if you want to add additional regional trails, you can also do so. So if you want to add the Rochambeau Trail or anything else, East Coast Greenway, you can kind of expand that even more. But that would be my first basic one, was that. And I would say if you want to amend to include other trails, you can do so at this time too.
So I'm hearing East Coast Greenway, Dahlgren.
Heritage Trail.
Heritage Trail, and of course the Rochambeau.
Joe, any other trails that we should consider adding?
Yeah, the Cannon Ridge to Ferry Farm Trail.
Cannon Ridge to Ferry Farm.
That's something that Stafford supervisors are already looking at. That would be very good.
I would like to see language where they look at the 3 years water line easement.
Okay, consider, yeah, because whenever the alignment comes, the finalized alignment, it's the lines that you saw on the drawing is just our lines. It's not until they actually start, we can get grading it, we make it.
Saw lines previously that showed going up Brook Road and what's going by the landfill. We really want the Heritage Trail by the landfill or impacting 100 houses on Brook Road.
So
with the landfill, that wouldn't work anyway because they wouldn't want us passing through the data center property that's
That's the
where that reusable water is.
Blocking us out.
Joe, am I hearing that it's I know you're talking about the one easement and you're right, but is it more, but not just that one easement, is it all, basically to try to prioritize keeping the trail off the roads and along easements, and is that what?
Does it have less impact and less cost if we don't have to move utilities and acquire all these right of ways? I mean, you figure if you're going to impact 100 property owners, you're going to have to prepare surveys and deeds and settlement. They have to settle for 100 deeds, and that's a lot of time consumed and cost. And if you got to move mailboxes, driveway pipes, drainage ditches, the costly process.
So from a staff perspective, real quick, I would just recommend suggesting the corridors, and then we're going to come back. If the policy committee likes it, then we can kind of start going down the shopping list of kind of the parties of either impacts along the road, along I don't want to call it MSD, but it's not called that here. Sewer district easements and other options. I think that's a good thing that we can keep in the back of our head. But I think for the policy committee, just saying we want you to look at these corridors and we'll figure out how to best fit the trails into that. Probably a different. We'll probably have additional conversations, this committee and others over that. So
especially as time is of the essence. They start breaking ground on it. First of all, when they start building the water lines, they're going to make a road for it. So they're going to make roads over streams and so forth. So why can't they leave those?
Well, that's the reason why I'm saying make the recommendation the quarters, because then they can do it. But if we start specifying which quarter it is, we might actually miss if they have to change or something shifts. It wouldn't allow you to get an alternative in it versus having a generalized corridor.
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I think I agree with what you're saying, that having it along the road is not ideal. It would be best to have it someplace in easement. If there's an existing easement, that could be easily modified to handle it. But that would be comprehensive throughout the entire region, not just one county or something like that. I think that's what you're kind of leading, and that when they come back to the more details, that's when that will be addressed.
Like I said, I'm just saying time is of the essence.
Yes.
There's applications for rezoning You could ask for proffers for it, land dedications, so forth. So those are the things that would be good to have a plan for it before it came up for rezone.
Absolutely, yep. Sir,
Well,
We
make
have
a
a motion.
motion. Go ahead, since
Well,
you make most of the motions. Anyway.
That's when I feel kind of bad at making because my closed captions has died here, so I got no internet, so I'm not
Oh,
hearing
here you go.
half of what's going on. And I'm pretty sure it sounds positive what I'm hearing. So if anybody else is on the committee has got a grip on it to know well enough to make the motion, I would be very happy to second it.
So the motion would then be, as John said, that it's written in our agenda. Recommendation to the policy committee to explore renewing the memorandums of understanding with the National Park Service for the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail, as well as explore other regional trial options like, and then we'll list the other.
I've just jotted down the East Coast Greenway, the Dahlgren Heritage Trail, Rochambeau, the Cannon Ridge to Ferry Farm Trail.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, McLaughlin.
One abstention and any against? Hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, next item is the constrained long-range plan priorities, John.
All right. I will go quickly, but also feel free to ask questions because this is a lot of materials kind of crushed down into a very narrow presentation. So FAMPO is currently in its long-range transportation planning process. A part of the long-range transportation planning process or plan is also the constrained long-range plan. So what this is actually a list of transportation projects in the region from approximately 2027 all the way to 2055. And what's important about this list is that it has to be fiscally constrained. So this is not the list that is the grand wish list. This is how much money we're expected to get to in 2055. And these are the projects in order that we're going to have to shoehorn everything in. So that's kind of the key item here, but I have some very good news. Next slide. So the other constraining item is that we've been in air quality conformity zone. So the federal government's basically been looking at us that our air quality dipped in the late 90s. We tripped a 20-year process, and during that 20-year process, it's particularly ozone in the region, our air quality has improved and we've been in compliance. So we no longer have this additional layer. So we're in good standings now with the EPA for our air quality. And so previously, with the constrained long-range plan, we have to do our financial constraints, but we used to have an air quality constraint. So it would actually trigger additional rounds of reviews that we may have to kick projects in or out due to our air quality projections. So for us, now this list is becoming a financial list only. Next slide. So importantly for this region, previous rounds, it was a battle royale between jurisdiction projects to be added into the fiscally constrained list. We would do it every few years. And basically, if you weren't in that 4-year, if your project wasn't in that 4-year kind of process for the updates, you were kind of on the outside for looking at both funding, both near and far term, as well as it was a huge hurdle getting projects to development. Now we can have a project that isn't in our current list, and we can now swap projects in and out. We still have to be physically constrained. So if we add a new project, we have to kick out another project. But we're looking at 2055, so there's a lot more flexibility there. And really what the constrained long-range plan is we have our TIP, our 4-year plan, and our 6-year plan. We generally know what are going to be our next 6 years of funding and everything. The CLRP is actually a better indicator for that mid-range. While we're looking at 2055, we're kind of developing that list of how it is. The more important part of the constrained long-range plan is probably going to be between 2034 and 2043, because those are going to be in a couple of years what our smart scale applications, what our other funding and grant applications are. You really want to have a good feeling for those mid years as far as how much potential funding is available and what projects can kind of fit in that box. So next slide. We've gone through our previous constrained long range plan. So if you remember, probably this is years ago, if you data dumped in cluster way, Lita has presented what we called our FAMPO analysis. And we've basically been looking back and reviewing because the last time we updated our constrained long range plan was just before COVID, just before cost inflation. We actually have one of the largest kind of constrained long range plans as far as a just number of projects. Next slide. And we also looked at that based on our modeling. So you've had other discussions about our future modeling endeavors. And what we do is we take our constrained long range list, say, we're going to build everything that's in it, anything that's capacity building. What does it do to our regional transportation network? And through the FAMPO analysis, kind of says, kind of not really keeping up very well. We're going to have a lot more severe congestion or a lot of our main kind of, don't want to call them arteries or not our arterials, but our main roads, because we actually are starting to see our main roads becoming congestion. Therefore, our minor collectors are starting to become congestion. My favorite kind of one that I like to point out is this model is kind of suggesting that, Northampton up in Stafford is going to become the main cut through because Garrisonville Road, Route 1, and other networks are basically slammed and everybody's looking for some other direction. So it's a gravity model, it's finding other ways. But generally speaking, our analysis shows that our capacity building projects aren't keeping up. Next slide. We also looked at kind of the cost and where we're spending our money. We have a lot of money going into, say, our interstate projects. It's actually the core, our principal arterials kind of have some of the, I don't want to say fewest amount of dollars because it's still significant at 51 million, but you're seeing that we're spending money on our major arterials and collectors. And if you look at that with what's happening with our traffic increase, we're not spending a lot on our principal arterials, but therefore we're going to see our principal arterials become even more congested out into the future. So we kind of starting to see that FAMPO is going to be reaching a capacity crisis based on future growth and how much and where we're building into our network. Next slide. So our key takeaways in this previous analysis is that this new constrained long-range plan that we are developing needs to focus on kind of two main things. We need to look at capacity, and in this group, we've also previously talked about connectivity, that we need to have roads connecting because any road that is making a connection now or currently into our out years when we're looking at it is also getting overwhelmed. So we're going to basically need our back roads to back roads to back roads or back connections depending on the mode, and that's kind of a universal. We kind of looked at our facility types. Facility type wasn't really as important. I would kind of say is Garrisonville Road is moving from a major collector to a minor arterial. It's been a major road the whole time, but us kind of looking at this classification doesn't always make sense because, traffic is traffic no matter which road you're on. Safety is still important, so we're still considering that. And we want to meet our strategic goals as a region. However, when we're also looking at other things when we apply for funding, is that when we look at land use, accessibility, economic development, some of the feature entries, particularly with the smart scale discussion, prioritizing on that makes us actually a weaker applicant. We are much less competitive on those. We can pay attention to those. But if we make, let's use accessibility to jobs as our number one priority, we become, in our grant applications, the projects that would do well and score well in those areas would score weakly against other projects in the state. So we're kind of looking and saying, okay, what does our criteria need to be in selecting our constrained long-range plans, being aware that depending on what projects we recommend will either make us more or less competitive in other venues, as well as we still want to reflect the needs of the citizens in the region. So next slide. Yes.
Strategic goals.
That is currently what's being discussed in the constrained long-range plan, and that's something that the policy committee is actively in consideration. If you go to the long-range transportation plan survey, which we're going to have out. That's actually a lot of what that survey is trying to identify. So that's still something that is in development, but it's going to be like better manage our say resiliency for during major events, reduce reliance, say, on 95 or the interstate. It's going to be a lot of different things. I don't have the exact ones right now because they're still in development, but it's along the same. Yes. So as I said, the previous one, the constrained long range plan was done pre-COVID, pre-cost inflation, and has a lot of projects in it. So when we actually revisited our projects list, we see that we have way too many projects in our current our current constrained long range plan if we do it today with the cost inflation numbers. So we're actually looking at scaling back our constrained long range plan. Why? But there's good news. There's a lot of projects in our constrained long range plan that really don't necessarily need to be here. Previously, with the air quality conformity analysis, if you're not in, you don't really have a way forward because you would have to trigger the air quality. It was a large federal hurdle to get through to switch projects on and off. So localities, in a lot of cases, I'm going to pick on Stafford for this one just because this one's a good thing. Put in every single possible project that they could think they might need federal dollars so that they would be in the constrained long range plan. And so that they didn't have to worry about if they need to do a project that it wouldn't be in there, and then they'll have to do air quality conformity analysis, bump them back another year or two, and just be kind of more of a project kind of nightmare. So you have some things like Ferry Farm safety widening improvements. And I think they had it as a $500,000. So the project was get it in there, lowball the number, and we'll figure it out later, but we just don't want to be outside of that list. So in comparison with other items, we have 337 projects. That's not normal. Richmond, in a 11 county jurisdiction region, has a bit less than that. But if you start looking at other places like Stanton, they probably have the fewest with like 21 projects. So we compare down. It's not quite a doomsday like cost inflation our projects are. And we have a lot of projects that aren't focused on capacity. So if you go back to the other slides, Lita, you don't have to do that. But if you go back and count up the little projects that we have that capacity building, it's about, I think about 25 to 30. So again, we can kind of pare down and focus on that. So right now, it's okay for projects not in our constrained long range plan. Doesn't mean it isn't a critical project. It just doesn't mean it's regionally significant. It doesn't necessarily need to have all the jurisdictions kind of weigh in on this project compared to, does Spotsylvania really need to take up like, what's a good one? The Hook Road widening safety improvements in Stafford. Probably not a major concern. You might have some folks who are interested, but that's not necessarily that has to be taken on the regional forum. So next slide. So we're talking about our formulas, and this is where we want to slowly start including this CTAC into it. So we're going to be developing the methodology of which projects get selected. We're going to do this we're proposing to do this in a kind of a multiple stage item where we're going to have a very data-driven process, particularly for the big projects. But as projects kind of work their way down, we want more and more local input. We can basically keep on the needs list. If that's basically our wish list. Things can exist on that and it's good to go. But as things kind of cascade up for different funding pots, we want to have some of the data-driven ones for the big projects with big price tags that are happening across jurisdictional lines or impacting the region. So a Harrison Road interchange would be that type of project, versus a local priority, which might be a smaller intersection improvement that isn't on like one of our major networks that could go in, that would still going to be consuming some of this financially constrained projects, but it's not necessarily something that the other jurisdictions really need to weigh in on. Next slide. So we're proposing kind of this example towards our staff members. We want to look at things kind of going down a list for doing the criteria. So this, again, is focusing on that connectivity and capacity. So we're going to design a list. So maybe we put Harrison Road interchange and the Chancellor Road extension spur as one of our regional projects. Notice that two different sizes, but they're making additional connections and capacity. Transformative is when we're making major upgrades to an existing facility or local priorities. And then we can put needs list somewhere else. But for the constrained long range plan, if we want to add a new project like a new post bridge, we would need to go through this process of figuring out where does it fit. And let's just say we put new post bridge in the connective and transformative, but the priorities are still those other projects. Well, this is now the chance that we have is that we can say, okay, let's bump it down a tier. So it's not just the big projects fight against the big projects, the small against the small. We can still now have a better negotiation process with it where, okay, well, we don't want it at that top level. Does it fit in the second level? Well, we can do that. But let's just say that still doesn't work. Do you want to remove, put it on the local priorities list? And again, because it's financially constrained, it's going to have to bump projects off the list to make it work. And again, if it's still like, nope, everything on there is still our priority, we can then drop it into the needs list. Okay, is everybody with me? Because I basically did a speed run of some really technical, complex planning muck. So, all right. Yes.
Is there more?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, I have questions.
Okay, next slide. So that is where I want to push it back on to this committee to say, hey, hold on, FAMPO. I'm not really on board with what's going on because sadly we have a very constrained time frame with this process. Is I need to tell the jurisdictions what they're kind of throwing at me with their projects and the scoring that has to be done. So we got to basically get something hammered out by June. But if I'm off base on focusing on connectivity, capacity, throwing in some safety, or any other items that I'm not considering, let me know now. Tell me your priorities because I'm going to take some of the feedback from the survey, and kind of develop a point system to make this happen. And I know that's a lot, and it's kind of asking you to kind of give me your opinions on a black box you can't quite see into yet. But this is kind of the fun part of the process where I just have to be quiet now and listen. So
Suggestions such as, let's stop trying to pave our way out of congestion, which is what this looks like, which is what we've been doing for decades, which has never worked and it never will. Those are the kind of suggestions you're looking for?
All suggestions.
That's my suggestion.
I understand your point, but it doesn't alleviate the fact that a lot of us are commuting to DC and we either have to drive or we rely on getting to some form of transportation. But it would be great to look at and see how because it's just paving. We're running out of real estate as we see with like trails and everything we want to get after. So probably a bit of a, I don't know, whole of government approach to both address the roads while also figuring out where we can expand other.
You're saying you think we can have it both ways?
I think we can if we're smart about it. We plan and we communicate. Yeah.
Well, I would say that it never has worked doing it the one way, and I doubt if we got enough money to do it both ways.
Dante?
Oh, so yeah, I wanted to second the idea that we should not be trying to pave our way out of this. There's this, so I went to school for economics, only for my bachelor's degree, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm still young and learning, but it seems like when we build roads, more people come to them and they fill them up. And I am very sympathetic to the idea that, yeah, the more roads we build, it seems like it doesn't really help with traffic congestion ultimately. Maybe it's a temporary fix. But I am also sympathetic to the plight of commuters. So my question would be, is our only tool for addressing traffic congestion building more roads? Like, for instance, and I'm not saying we do this, but why not have like a high speed rail that would, commuters could go to select stations instead of taking the VRE, which takes like an hour and a half to DC, get on a high speed rail, then be there in like 30 minutes. And I think you'd have a great reduction in congestion and people who are, you know, taking I-95 and taking these main roads because they have to commute to DC. I think a lot of our problems, especially in Spotsylvania, are sourced in the fact that we're a commuter town. So how do we make commuting like fast and easy for people without building roads? And I think looking into more advanced train technology instead of building more roads would be a better use of our time and money and would be a better investment.
Just because I want to clarify, I did pick on roads as far as the examples, but our constrained long range plan is multimodal. So in things, it would include the VPRA's third and fourth rail coming down through the region. It would include all sidewalks and trails that we're receiving on that federal level or regional level.
Is the rail high speed rail? Or is it like a normal, like
Heavy rail.
heavy rail? Because, you know, we probably can't get one of them Chinese bullet trains, you know, although that would be cool. But if we could get something that's like a little bit faster so that like cost benefit analysis in my head, I'm like, okay, I have to go to DC. Do I want to drive or do I want a really quick like train ride? I think that would be a very easy or at least intuitive, I won't say easy, but intuitive solution to the traffic problems that allows us to address the very real need that a lot of our community has to need to commute to DC and Northern Virginia, but without, you know, paving a way like Mr. Farley had mentioned earlier, which is a concern I have too, right?
Real quick, just so that folks are also aware that the additional rail lines that are going in currently are the biggest constraint on passenger rail is the freight. They have to share tracks. It's been previously CSX, as now they're transitioning ownership to the VPRA so that you can have passenger and rail operating independently of meeting freight trains. So.
Question, I think in a past meeting, were you saying that there was plans to put another third line?
Is already
And they've been working on that.
already working.
What is it?
Yes.
Because there are plans for sections of third rail. Okay, but the other sections aren't funded because they're the most expensive sections that include bridges.
Okay, yeah.
So like the bridge going over the Rappahannock River, that there isn't a third rail plan there. There's no third rail plan in the city of Fredericksburg at all. There's no third rail at Hope Springs Marina. There's a long bridge there. There's bridges up at Widewater, and there's bridges that go over roads. The most common one that people see all the time is at that road where the trucks get stuck underneath the bridge. Yeah, Harold Road. That's one of them. So the problem is all those. If you want to expand a third rail, you're going to have to spend a lot of money on bridges, and you're talking billions of dollars. And I don't think
We can get that money from all the roads that we shouldn't build in this plan.
Or, I mean,
so the situation is the lines are pretty much at capacity. There's about 80 trains that go down to the tracks right now a day. So that's about a train every 18 minutes or so. So and that's a mixture of fast trains with freight trains. So they're sharing the lines, and it's if you can't put a fast train behind a freight train or it catches up to it, and you might be able to switch it on the third track in some sections, but that has logistic issues and safety issues trying to flip the trains going on different tracks, especially if one train's going one way, 10 miles up the road, another train's going on the same track heading straight at it. You got to figure out how to safely do that. So that's the problem. The cost is high. Plus, that there's one thing that people don't understand is our local gas tax revenue goes into subsidy. It doesn't. Our gas tax isn't used for roads. It's used for subsidies, specifically VRE subsidy, bus subsidy and Stafford, airport subsidy. So there's very little money that is left after those subsidies that go to road improvements. So, the subsidy right now varies because COVID happened. At COVID time, the federal subsidy was $73,000 per rider because we had a lack of riders. And so the feds put in like $80 million to VRE to get it going, and it was $73,000 per rider, about $250 per rider per day. Normally the subsidy is about $3,200 per rider. So like in Stafford, for instance, if we put another 1,000 riders on VRE, then we're gonna have to come up with $3.2 million, and it's not there in the gas tax revenue. So where does the money come from? So that's a big constraint.
I would love Rupert and Dante to be able to say that as far as developing greater mass transit, that is something that hopefully will somehow happen. But realistically, looking at the philosophical way that people move around from place to place, I think that should have happened a long, long time ago. And I think it's kind of difficult. The other constraint that we have regarding what we're talking about right now is major projects have to be in our local area. We're not just talking about something that's going to connect to DC or Richmond or wherever. What we've always talked about as far as trying to make it easier to get from point A to point B around here is to give people choices. In other words, to create a grid where they are not forced to go in one particular direction. The three main east-west routes that we have here are Route 610, Route 17, and also Route 3 in Spotsylvania County. The biggest connectivity and capacity project that we have established that we're all aware of because it was this particular committee, even though there are a lot of new people here right now, this committee had proposed the river crossing project to be somewhat different than what the original 5 options were. For example, we had also tried to include a choice where people wouldn't be forced to travel. I guess with option C, there are 37,000 vehicles per day that are supposed to travel, through that option C route, which connects to Gordon Shelton Boulevard by going through a community of townhomes and so forth, and then to branch off into Fall Hill, into Carlby Silver Parkway, into Bragg Road. That is a choke point. And now with the city also having plans to develop a shopping center across from where the Wegmans is on the other side of Fall Hill, that includes Trader Joe's, you can imagine that the congestion in the vicinity is also going to be perhaps even a little bit. So what CTAC had to try to do with the plan that we forwarded, as many of the people who are on the committee will remember, is to have a branch off of the parkway we're creating that would allow people the choice to go into the city of Fredericksburg if they wanted to, or from Fredericksburg into Stafford County, but have another branch off of that parkway that was going to go directly through Spotsylvania County and connect to Route 3.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, giving choices to people, if the city wants to have people who are coming into places like Central Park to shop and to eat and so forth, well, they're still going to have everybody else who doesn't want to do that going through that choke point. But if we had the option of giving them the choice to go to Spotsylvania County first, then you've taken the opportunity and provided it just to the people who want to go to Fredericksburg, and you've given the opportunity for the other people who didn't to go somewhere else. If you think about the amount of congestion that exists between the I-95 intersection and like Salem Church Road on Route 3, no one wants to drive there. pretty much almost all the time. You would eliminate a lot of that most likely. The problem winds up being is that that all has to be modeled. So even though a substantial amount of money was spent on the consultant to examine the 5 options that ultimately resulted in option C, we would have to have another study that would be able to evaluate how that would impact if we had another branch that went due south and then connected directly to Route 3 from Stafford County. So as far as what we could try to provide as CTAC members, we already did provide it. We already provided an option that would go into Spotsylvania County. And obviously, this has been discussed many, many times at the policy board, and they intend to have continued discussion regarding that. And then I think ultimately we should try to continue to pursue that to try to see if they can ultimately throw some money at a study to get modeling that will show the actual impact of that. You might ultimately wind up finding out that a route that goes directly from Stafford County into Spotsylvania County maybe performs even better than the one that was existing, like option C that goes into Fredericksburg. We don't even know. So if we could maybe recommend the project something to continue what we started.
I have a few questions, as brief as I possibly can. First, you were talking about the environment, and this is just kind of a, for me, question. You're talking about the air quality issues that had been hurdled. Since the endangerment finding basically just got tossed, is that even still relevant anymore?
I would have to go back and let's do more on that and ask folks.
You're talking like the animal endangerment?
No, we had reached the endangerment point because of the greenhouse gases, and then that entire finding by the EPA in 2009 got tossed.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years ago, however long it is, when I joined this committee, I remember having a discussion that I-95 widening, we were contractually bound not to be able to do that because of the Easy Pass agreement, and that was up on the board as one of the things that we were going to do. So is the kind of the line of demarcation south of Easy Pass? So that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
So basically, we're going to widen 95 for however much, just for it to bottleneck back into the same old crap.
I mean, that's actually a current project by Spotsylvania. So I use Spotsylvania County as the example because we're kind of looking, it's like, hey, Spotsylvania, you have these projects, you want to work down the list, we have constraints. Which ones are your priorities? We start with being an analytical example from the top and we move down and it becomes more and more of a local priority choice.
Okay.
But yeah, that project, at least currently, would actually be automatically included in our constrained long range plan because we're currently spending funds on it. It's currently in our long range plan. It's actually, I think it's in the tip. So right now, that's one of the mechanisms. So we're developing this methodology. We basically say, if you're currently in our tip, you're moving forward. We're expending money in the next 6 years. It might not be construction, but this is preliminary engineering. And so we're moving forward. It's still in the constrained long range plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean
it's happening tomorrow.
It's happening tomorrow, or even that it's going to be built by 2055, because I've seen things get pushed out and pushed back in. But to kind of the perception point is to get projects through, particularly large projects, it takes a very long time to work its way through both the planning process and before we even start talking engineering, the community participation, like the discussions we're having or have had on the river crossing. It's still a very out year project, but because things can get pulled from out year to mid-year or mid-year pushed out to out year, that mid-year becomes kind of the important demarcation as far as what are your priorities, as far as the the realities of a constrained financial plan. So it says, okay, we all want these, who's actually willing to kind of start spending the hypothetical money on those plans. And if you look back, and maybe I'm going to date myself, this is like 20 plus years ago, early 2000s, mid 2000s, our roadway network was basically the same. I'm thinking Centerport Parkway just went in, that connection to 95, Callan Boulevard and maybe South Point. Is that the only real three new facilities that have gone in the last 20, 25 years? And so we're kind of saying, are we going to kind of do what kind of happened, 25 years ago of we're not going to make new connections. But then we eventually hit a point where 95 becomes such a problem child. The state basically elevates it to its own priority and we have to go along with it. And that's how we got both some of the 95 lanes as well as the easy pass lanes to a lesser extent. I think there was additional discussions going on. I don't want to be quite that cynical, and I wouldn't say so, but 95 slowly became a bigger state issue. And I think folks stepped up.
All right, and then I'm trying to get clarity because the conversation is for the place on what exactly you're asking of this committee tonight. Are we just like ostensibly going to put up a motion for these priorities to go into action? Is that what you're asking of us? And hoping that like the lot of us have done our homework and seen what this looks like?
You can. I made that if you basically want to tell FAMPO staff that the direction that they're going with capacity, connections, safety, and allowing local priorities cascade. Like if there's something that you want to yell the stop all work, we want you to reassess, this would be the time. But there is a kind of a critical time component because we have to have these rules in by the end of the year.
I was looking for clarification. Last question, is the Mine Road, selfishly, the Mine Road, that thoroughfare part of this?
It should, yes.
Cool. I'm good.
Two things that Jason had. First, I just want to compliment and thank you for your sharing your insights.
Thank you, Mr.
Your knowledge. Not here necessarily, but
We're all really
sort of a
smart.
broader picture. It's, it is the rule, so to speak, that, in the end, 2 + 2 eventually adds up to 4. My comment segueing from when you said you're learning, I'm learning too. Still learning, will always learn, I hope. And when I was appointed to this committee, Al Watkins sat with me and gave me an extraordinary high level and also more detailed overview of the river crossing project. And I guess my first question is, and if I missed it in that list, don't forgive me, but what is the status of where is that right now? So we'll just be very clear, like I'm stupid.
Okay.
Kidding me, it's in this.
2 ways. It's currently in our needs list. So it's in we would like to have this, but there's no dedicated identified funding, even looking out to 2055 right now. However, we have just submitted the build grant looking to fund kind of the next stage of the NEPA process. So it's about $6 million to kind of get that certification. It was pared down. We were looking at for initial engineering as well, but that would bumped it up to a $25 million ask. We decided, and with VDOT having its own kind of capacity constraints at the time to be able to manage that project at this stage, they would need additional time to look at that it was pared down to looking at the need for certification. So that's where that project sits. So in the kind of consideration of this kind of process, this is one of the primary examples of here's a needs list item. Does it get moved on to the constraint list because it would be a $300 million plus project, depending on what year it's placed in, because we have to calculate inflation, how much money that we're likely to get, cost escalations for other projects and whatnot. Where does it sit? And then you start having the discussion is, well, if we have all these other projects and needs, what gets put on, what gets bumped off? And that the good news now is that instead of every 4 years having a big fight of it, we can revisit this every year if we choose to do so, saying, you know what, we really don't want another widening of a specific roadway. For example, we would rather invest in, say, a high-speed rail. We can actually move that on and bump other things off, but it has to be fiscally constrained on this list for our planning purposes.
Thank you. That's helpful. Second point or question, I think it's both, is Okay, not to bug this out too much here, it's a one-on-one conversation, where I just go to YouTube, or Joe takes me, I'm going for coffee, I take Joe's coffee, and somebody with a greater brain spells it all out for me in the nitty gritty, so to speak. So the River Crossing project, it's called, for example. So the locality is all of us, right? We have to be part of this, or we're affected, or affecting the process, so that means at some point, what, is there a hard and fast sort of demarcation where our friends of VDOT get involved in terms, where do they come in relative? If it's too much to explain,
Right.
then I'm happy to like go to a campground somewhere and watch a video.
First and foremost, there are always a partner.
This is simple.
First and foremost, they're always a partner through basically every single step. More or less, once the jurisdictions have all kind of agreed on a generalized corridor, not necessarily alignment, but a corridor, and we start for a large project, they are like hard and fast, we handle NEPA. More. So that is kind of the point of where
there's a handoff.
Not
necessarily entirely.
Yes.
Not sure to talk about it everywhere.
But definitely, I'm a planner. I don't do engineering. So if you're talking about geometric roadway design, I step out of that one. However, even on some of the projects like the grants and smart scale applications where they're out in the fields with consultants saying, well, this intersection, the bump outs for the sidewalk needs to be this and this. I might be sitting in the back, but I'm just here as a informed observer that says, if I see something that's happening, let's just say a constructability concern where I'm just like, there's no way in our constrained long range plan are we ever going to do an elevated roadway network on Garrisonville Road. We're going to be like waving a flag and say, guys, that's not feasible. It's great from an engineering. It's like, how would it look if we need to double stack the roadway? But that's where we're at. So it is a slow trade-off, but usually that hard point comes at engineering and NEPA, if it's a NEPA impact. But yeah, that's kind of where the mark is. So we're basically starting to say, okay, VDOT, here are the projects that we think we're going to be able to afford in the next 20, 25 years. We're going to put them on the table. They're actually providing us with a lot of the financial numbers and expected revenue and kind of some of the cost items. We're looking at the cost, like we all kind of look at it, it's like, sure, we think we can fit all the pieces here. And what I'm kind of asking, particularly with this committee tonight, is that from our previous analysis, previous discussions, including feedback from this committee on other items at FINA and whatnot, including congestion pricing, not building our way out of congestion, other multimodals. Our general takeaway, particularly with FINA, is that some point between now and 2050, our roadways hit that point of where the feather breaks the camel's back. We can no longer add more cars to the network without a complete and total shutdown, where we're looking at some of those red values are 2 times over the volume to capacity ratio. So give you an idea right now, our worst roads are at 1. We're talking about some of those roads. They are physically impossible, but you see the speeds there, like there's whole other things going on behind that. But we're looking at it as like Northampton Boulevard should not be significantly over capacity. It's a 2-lane road through a residential street, but it's one of the few that actually makes a connection between like Garrisonville Road and Route 1 north-south. So we're seeing that happening across that. Roadways that should not be significantly congested are significantly congested. So we're looking at a capacity problem. When per our previous analysis, I understand Rupert's point about this is a problem that we're trying to pave our way out. Our regional history suggests otherwise, that we actually have trying to pave. We've been widening some roads like Route 3, Route 17. We've had widening projects, but we really haven't had new roads or new capacity and connection items. Those are very few and far between. So we've been looking at that. We're seeing rising costs for projects. We are basically FAMPO at this point in time, because it's the constraint list is a constrained time problem too. Saying this is what we've started to take to the TAC. This is start of the discussions we're having with some of our elected officials, our state partners on other items. Is there anything that you basically want to pull the emergency brake on and say, no, we really want you to put a bigger emphasis on safety? Maybe you want us to provide a bigger emphasis on accessibility for jobs. we've had discussions with the staff level of that's good, but it might weaken other positions. We're just going to have to identify other funding sources. So we might not be able to go to smart scale for it, which means localities might have to step up to cover those costs, and whether or not that's the appropriate decision, that's a political decision. But that would be something that we would have to address looking in the constraint learning. And if we make our projects less competitive, we're going to give a smaller part of the state pie. So therefore, we would have to cut down a few of our projects from the constraint list. So we're trying to have that big discussion. And the action item for tonight was to say, because I am very much aware if I start talking capacity and connectivity, that Rupert probably isn't going to like that particular approach. Yeah, like that's the reason I'm leaning away. But on the other hand, that is a discussion we need to have at this committee. And if you feel strongly that the staff needs to revisit this, because we're basically about to ask our localities to provide their projects, and we're going to say this one's in, this one's out. It's not as worst case scenario as it's been in previous rounds, but that's something we definitely want your feedback and say if there's a course correction that we need to take, we are listening. So
I'm hearing that you're looking, it can be beyond connectivity, capacity, safety.
And
it could
it's
be
not just
anything.
rail, it is, we're looking at, is it rail capacity and connectivity? Do we need something else on rail? Like that, like we are applying this multimodally. Do we need more sidewalk or trail connectivity in capacity? That's something that we're looking at. Yes. No, I've been talking a little too much. I'm sorry.
That's what I was gonna ask you. This road and I'm always gonna be on the transportation side. To reduce all this congestion is not, good roads are not the answer, because for congestion. So what I wanted to know is public transportation and human services transportation a part of this? What percentage of that is being thought of so we can reduce? Are we thinking about a BRT? I'm off a rail, but with the, like they were talking about the third rail, I know there's gonna be, and I know it's gotta be partial because we do have water we go over. Where are we at when it comes to the rails of giving us right of way for passengers? This is a part of that. I still believe that we need to start building roads and really put money into transportation, expand the public transportation, and maybe kind of they just came in with Red Transit, making more connectivities in the BRT. Since a lot of the roads up in Northern Virginia have designated bus lanes and straightaways. So I'm always going to be on the transportation side.
So yes, there's a public transportation, rail, fixed route bus service that typically goes into the capacity consideration as far as the dollar. Now we do work with DRPT to try to forecast the same way we ask VDOT to look at some of our road capacity loans. We ask DRPT. We're asking BPRA, the ones who are managing the Main or South rail service as well. Reach out to VRE. We're trying to basically say, look into your long range crystal ball and kind of give us projections of how much money you think is going to be available, and then tell us the projects that you're also looking to do. So some of it is going to be like net neutral in this region. BPRA has a certain amount of money that it's going to be spending in our region. Maybe they ask for more, generally not. Normally the one that kind of trips us up is having to find additional revenue is like station improvements. Not always completely accurate and things, because we can kind of move some money around for that, but that's something that we have to look at. That we know we're going to get a fixed amount of money for bread, for example, or PRTC is going to provide us. We now have to include OmniRide because the previous one they had like one stop in Garrisonville. That was it. We didn't even bother doing the numbers of part of their service. Now they have a lot more service, so we're going to be like, okay, tell us how much you're expecting to spend. So if it's going to be, we need to expand capacity, even on public transit. That means maybe bigger, more fleets, routes. What is it going to take? And are we willing to put that on our big table of dollars available to say, yes, that's the part that we're like to do. So
I would like you to also add human services transportation.
That's something near and dear to my heart too.
Cycling connectivity.
Yes.
Yes.
Cycling connectivity. I will Bang that drum until y'all throw me out of this place.
Yeah, connectivity is a big one for me too.
Connectivity, that is one of the ones that we pulled directly from this group because we've had previous discussions on it. So that is
That's
the big one for us.
I mean, that's the last thing. They always talk about the last mile or first mile.
I do want to say, I was just in Florida last couple of months, that's why I haven't been here. But I noticed there's a big pickup on electric bikes now. And just a few years ago, there weren't a lot. They're all over the place. And that trend is going to be just like cell phones. Cell phones started out slow, and now everybody has one. So I think we're going to have to focus on creating trails for electric bikes.
And electric scooters. And I'll even go one step further. The capital share bike, bike shares that they have. I feel that in a lot of ways our transportation system is evolving to accommodate that. Back in the 1920s when cars were first coming out, people would park their cars and no one thought about it until all these cars were piled up and blocking up the roads. And then they realized we needed to have parking lots. And then counties came in, localities said you have to have minimum parking standards. Now we're almost going back on that, and that's a whole different trend. But when you're going down to DC and you're walking down the street, you see these the share trails bikes laying around because there's no place to corral them. So that's why I say is that the connectivity is so really important. The first mile, the last mile, that will increase the capacity, that will increase safety, because right now we have people who have to walk along very busy roads and in the street and the right of ways on the paved areas because there's that one block of sidewalk is vacant. And I think that our roads are going to continue to evolve. And I'm using that word again to accommodate more of the connectivity, more of these electric bikes and scooters.
You were talking about the difficulty of expanding rail. If we'd followed the advice of a committee back in the 70s, I believe it was, we wouldn't need to worry about that. We recommended diverting freight to the 301 corridor. There's already a line up there in Maryland. Build a bridge for the railroad freight cars next to the 301 bridge, tied in with the usual line. Then we could have used our existing rail to DC exclusively for passengers. So I think maybe another project to consider is looking again at that committee's recommendations and diverting freight 301. Rail freight, that is. And I might miss the point, but it sounded like we're saying expanding a highway, widening a highway does not increase capacity. Okay. I read it wrong.
Any other, Dante?
Oh, I really wanted to second, in the proverbial sense, not the Robert's Rules of Order sense, what Tamara had said. And I agree with her full-heartedly that I think our way moving forward is, public transit, right? And I do concur with Alan that there is culturally, right? We love our cars, right? And we love, being able to be in our own little spaces on the roads. But as was discussed earlier today in our public transit presentation, we're able to reduce traffic so significantly, and there does become an incentive, I think, for a lot of people to make that choice, as it's like, okay, I could be in my own car and have an extra 30 to 45 minutes of my commute, or I can get on the bus, and the bus has its own lane, and now it's a lot quicker for me to get place to place. And so I am just fully in support of the public transit kind of direction. Now, with that said, I do support like the river crossing project. I think that should be a priority, and it's unfortunate that I know some of the hiccups with that are partially the responsibility of my county, Spotsylvania. We had some folks in there who were not a fan of it for some reason or another. I think Spotsy is a little guilty sometimes of feeling in my mind, unjustly, that if we cooperate with other counties, we will somehow get sidelined. I don't think that's the case. I think that these projects have very real benefits to us when it comes to river crossing that I'd love to see pursued, and but alongside, the speed rail and the train and the mass transit, because I think that would be so cool if the people who are commuting from Spotsylvania to DC, it's a lot quicker for them to get to DC, and then they come home, and that's more time to spend with their families, and then that's more time that they're going out with their families to do things. That's more tax revenue, and it's an investment that I think ultimately pays for itself, even though it will certainly be expensive. And the public sector has a hard time sometimes getting a good deal on things, but that I think it's a worthwhile investment that I really think that they should be suggested to look into.
I want to second, maybe third, what Dante is saying, John, relative to CLRP and specifically the rail piece. And I think what Rupert said makes good sense. I was not here back then, around, but in a different country. But as Jimmy said, there are hundreds of thousands of us throughout this area who, for various reasons, not the least of which is to support our professional growth and development and feed our families, work north of 234. We have to go to a physical space north of that roadway or north of 495. And I'm just leave it with this as an opinion comment, not necessarily something for CLRP, but it's something I tell my current supervisor and others who are part of the VRE. I love that train system. But when I started riding that 2004 to my job in Northeast DC, so I take it all the way to Union Station, and that low-level FERSA rail car, powered by those engines that were rickety, radicky. They literally, engineers would have to go out with rubber bands and hold screws together on the side of the engine. That is no joke. I saw an engineer. It was 55 minutes from Leland Road. Now, granted, there's a Spotsylvania station. There's another, 10 miles of railway. 55 minutes. You know what it is now? An hour and 15. Yeah. And now, I don't know. They have a new CEO. It seems like things there just kind of we're just going along with making new signs at the stations and collateral and all these fancy digital things. And no, we got to think outside the box with that thing too. We express train only shaves off 10 or 15 minutes. Well, that's it. I'll take my medicine now.
And I think to your point, I know we've talked about this for quite a bit. I'm like, I think we're all learning here.
Yes.
How do we expand what we do in the CTAC? Because what I don't want to do is be stovepiped and think that this is just CTAC, we go to the policy committee, and then how are we, for example, if we are interested in building a third line, who are we communicating either at state, federal, or our congressmen or elected officials involved in the process? Because I think that 95 is incredibly important to the Commonwealth of Virginia. It connects Richmond to DC. It's good for the Eastern Seaboard. How are we thinking bigger? Or is there already a mechanism that, hey, we've identified one fleet, it could serve a wider purpose? How are we pushing for maybe federal for it? Is that even what's going on? Are we shooting in the stars when we try and?
I mean, I think, are you talking about you're talking about rail primarily, right? And
well, rail is one, but
or
right.
More
efficient. Because I know that there's stops along the way. So even if the train's going full speed, it only takes so long to get to see. There's nothing you can do about that. But you could increase capacity, which could then put more VRE trains on the road, which could drive access.
Yeah.
You have weekend service, and you can all these things going north. 95 on a Saturday is horrible.
They're looking at some of that now with the new seat.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
This is an individual coming from Boston, Scott. Again, it's almost a Kiwi, Boston to 95 corridor, intuitively. Okay, we're not that what's the word? The land mass is larger, et cetera, right? All these different, the CSX railway, but it just, I know that they're doing, I've heard from former supervisor Bonke, like Joe, who sat on that board. And it said that there is, one of the things they were looking for when we do executive leader is somebody who has that outside the box thinking. So I know this isn't about VR. But in terms of what we've currently got, just doesn't seem to be most effective.
So, I just want to make sure, you all have heard about the transforming rail in Virginia and the whole, Virginia rail plan, right?
Heard of it.
Yeah, that makes
But
make this a future.
That would be, yes, because let me pull my soapbox out here for a minute. The reason why I picked Fredericksburg is because, I lived in Virginia for many, pretty much raised in Virginia. I went to school here, blah, blah, blah. Moved to Maryland, and then we moved back, and we were looking for a place to live somewhere in Virginia, and we picked Fredericksburg because of the transforming rail in Virginia. The Virginia Rail Plan is very interesting, and I'm going to try to capture it. John, you jump in and tell me where I'm wrong. 2020, the General Assembly adopted the Virginia Rail Plan, and they put in $10 billion with a B to create the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. As part of that, they came up with several goals that were supposed to meet by 2030. One of which is the replacing the long bridge across the Potomac River, which I can tell you. See all this gray hair? Well, I actually just went and got my hair colored, but besides that, there's a lot of gray hair there. And when ever since my entire career as a planner, I've been hearing about having to replace the long bridge. It's been something that's been going on. They're doing it, and it's going to get done by 2030. One of the goals they had in the Virginia Rail Plan is they wanted to double the number of passenger trips in Virginia by 2030, of passenger rail trips. So again, the reason why I picked Fredericksburg is because it's a train town, and there's a rail here. I knew that they were going to start, the state's been pumping money in. One thing while I was living in Maryland, the Maryland MDOT people were the train people were very jealous of Virginia because they put so much money in, and we were actually buying the railroad right of ways from the rail station, and that's a big deal because the railroad has a lot of power. I mean, you can't. It's next to impossible to get them to change their mind. So that's a big deal. But they're increasing the rail all over. You have to go back to the plan, but that's one of the reasons why I picked this town. So I'm going to get off my soapbox.
We've also had presentations from OmniRide, our committee as well, and that is, the equivalent, I guess, say, or attempt at the bus service that comes from here to go and commute up to DC area and so forth too. So, and I don't recall exactly what capacity they were talking about it increasing at that time, but also that is something that was going to be used too. I think a lot of our conversation today has been somewhat regarding the mass transit, and a lot of it is commuter travel. So we've been talking about a lot. Please keep in mind that we are trying to do something that is locally. And going from here to DC is important, but moving people around in our 5 different regions or 5 different jurisdictions is, I think, where more of our focus needs to be.
I think that's where the last mile comes in, the connectivity.
Well, I agree. The thing about BRE, it doesn't help local traffic. Okay, because everybody's driving to the station and they leave from the station. So it doesn't help local traffic, especially on weekends. Useful. But I think we need to focus on locally and stop focusing on creating an environment for a bedroom community. I'd like to see a community where we work, shop, and play in the same community rather than people putting out, going to DC and spending their money there and coming back. It's really hurting for revenue because of that. People are spending their money outside of the county, coming back.
I'll second that with what Joe was saying, and of course, the way to get there is stop sinking all of our money into asphalt like we've been doing, because all this business of paving our way out of congestion for the last 60 years has just created a bunch of suburban sprawl, which is exactly the opposite of what you're asking for. So stop the asphalt in a nutshell and put the money into transit, into walkable communities where you don't need a vehicle.
Okay,
Our number one goal, I feel like, should be for any project, does it contribute to us getting out of this automobile dependency? If it doesn't contribute to getting out of automobile dependency, move on to the next project.
here's the problem. 1% of Stafffordians ride the VRE. 1%. How many percent drive on the road each day?
That's because they have no other alternative.
Whose fault is that? That's our fault for putting down all the asphalt. We've endorsed every development.
Got to go with public opinion. And we cut our road improvement money and start shifting it all to VRE, then be a big problem.
Well, if I may add, so there's a rule in nature that water goes down the path of least resistance, and I second Rupert that and then Tamara said too, they don't really have another choice. So that everyone's going to drive a car. Like currently, I have to drive a car. I live out in Partlow in Spotsylvania. I border Caroline. But theoretically, if I lived closer and I could benefit more from public transit, I would love to not have to pay for the constant oil changes. I just had to replace my front two tires. I'm always having to fix something with it. I'd love to be able to just take a train or bus anywhere. And we need to expand that opportunity to people so that instead of 1% of Staffordians, there's more. And going back to the thing I had said earlier, if you build it, they will come. If we build asphalt, they will come to the asphalt. If we build better public transit, they will come to the public transit.
Have you gotten?
You got our notes? I mean, I haven't.
I just think.
Any other comments, or should we?
But just want to say, I think it would be more effective and faster and cheaper would be to go with the rubber tire trains, omni-ride system. Not only does it open it up where you can have the train pick up people from anywhere. Okay, so you don't have to rely on specific rail stations like in Brook or Leland and so forth on roads that really aren't suitable for a functional traffic. You can place these on 95 and then use the express lanes, and you don't have to. What's the engine cost now for a VRE engine? Like $10 million, ridiculous amount like that.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Maybe 20 million. I don't know. But,
In the lead time.
Yeah. I'm saying we could focus on lower cost things that will be more effective and be able to be built faster. I think that's what we really need to look at.
I don't always be concerned.
And another thing is, I don't want to see freight getting taken off of the rail. I think freight's very important. I think a train that goes 1,000 miles with freight is more important than a VRE train that goes 50 miles. The trucks take a long time to accelerate, and it creates traffic backup. So if we can get those trucks off the roads, I think it's more effective in the long run.
We're constrained in our particular region, especially Stafford City and Spotsylvania, because the greatest north-south opportunity to travel is also an interstate. It is the most used local way of going north and south. But much of what some of our counties are trying to do is to create other north-south routes, which will take some of the transportation off of I-95, making it easier to use it if necessary. But at the same time, allowing for local transport to easily get around. One of the things that Ian Ellis once said to me that stuck with me is, in order to be able to go east or west in our region, you have to go north and south. You have to be able to go north so you can go east, or vice versa. That is why I think saying a grid, even though it is asphalt, I would love, as people have said, to have the community where people could shop and eat and work in the same area, much like happens in Japan. But I think philosophically, we've gotten so far past everything that way that to try to ask people to change their way of living is kind of insurmountable, especially in our short amount of time that we're talking about here.
I can imagine 100 years from now, someone saying, we done it 100 years ago, when we having this problem.
Well, we'll be here. I mean, what'll happen the next 10 minutes of this?
That's my problem. I think too far ahead.
I think John's got a lot of information. If we're ready, can we move on? Okay. Okay, so the next item is staff reports, the LRTP survey.
The LRTP survey has been extended, so if you want to provide additional items. However, we are over 1,000 respondents already, so we actually hit our target goal before the extension. We have, I am on a blank on it, there's a conference, but it's not really like a go work at a hotel or conference, professional conference. But there is a couple of special groups that are having meetings that we want to solicit feedback from. I think that it's later this next Thursday.
It's Tuesday. Next Tuesday, it's the Community Connections Expo, or is that the Fredericksburg Expo Center?
So, yes, thank you. I knew I was blanking on what it was, but we're extending it so that we provide a comment period and attend that expo to receive even more comments. So we're at our threshold. It's been good, but we just wanted to make sure that we was opportunity for folks to provide comment. And if you don't know, 1,000 or just slightly over is the golden number for having a statistically representative sample with a population of our size with a 95% confidence interval. So it's not just a let's kind of get to a nice number. That one is, yes, this is a very good survey. Yeah. So awesome on that. Okay.
Survey.
Oh, I was going to move to the next item. Okay.
I did not suggest to any of my friends and acquaintances take this survey because they had too many questions in it that I thought showed a bias. And I don't like surveys that show a bias. They weren't that bad. I mean, VDOT used to be terrible about that sort of thing. They would have a survey saying, how does this important highway improvement benefit, your travel? It wasn't quite that bad, but still, I like it to be totally, factual and not leading anyone in any particular direction. So what I would like to recommend is in the future, whenever there's a survey posed, that we get to see it first. Tech gets to see it first, policy gets to see it first, to eliminate any of this stuff so that I can proudly suggest it to my friends. Second item, I like surveys that at the end, you have a little button you can push that will send you a copy. This doesn't have that either.
Yeah. I agree with you on that because I took the survey and then I wanted to go back in and look at the questions and I couldn't, it wouldn't come up. So I didn't, I wanted to, study it a little bit to see how I would figure it would come out. But I even emailed, FAMPO staff here and, they never came up with the, survey questions.
Interesting.
All right, we do because I think you, Rupert, we can provide your, either the questions or anything, just send us an email. I'll check in to see what happened with that one. And your survey response, that's your information. We won't share like everybody's survey response yet because it's still in a survey, but if that's an item you want, yeah, that's not a typical survey practice, but we'll get to that. But I do want to note that the survey itself was a discussion item at the policy committee where the policy committee members themselves actually went through and reviewed and made adjustments to questions. So it wasn't just FAMPO staff running with it. We started with that, but yeah, there was input for that.
Okay, did they extend the deadline? Did they extend the deadline for filling out the
Yeah,
survey?
the deadline is set. Yes.
How long?
So, through next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Okay.
So would Rupert's request that we also get an opportunity to look at the questions require like a formal motion asking the policy committee for that? Or is that just an informal ask we can give them to give us that extra courtesy?
I mean, we can make that as, I mean, we can bring that.
As a
I'm trying to
discussion?
think if it was or if it was just mentioned. I don't remember where it was. Like, we normally don't get in like wordsmith into questions.
Right,
As
yeah.
a group. I mean, it's dangerous even with that on that level because survey design can get wonky. But no, we definitely put it in front of the policy committee because they do that. It's their purview, being a part of that board and its communication from the board to the citizens. So that's something we can visit. I can definitely bring it up. It's just not currently standard practice, but there's a lot going into that.
But I do share your concern that if everyone at the table starts wordsmithing it, right? And it's hard enough to get two people to agree to what something should say, let alone 24. So, but so if it's impractical, I understand that too.
I'm trying to think of if it didn't come into this committee or if it trying to think of the timeline and how it was working. I don't think we put it on the agenda for this committee.
No, I don't think so, because I think the first time I saw the questions was when I.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we, with our guest, it was an item that I decided to pull for time constraint because we ran long. But I'll revisit that. That's something that y'all would like to start taking a look at. We do have transportation survey and community preference updates. It's been on the bottom for a future agenda item. Survey discussion has slowly bumped for other items, but we can come back and revisit that if y'all want to see behind the scenes as well as general surveys across the region as a whole, not just FAMPO, even some PDOT ones.
Okay.
So that's it. May I run through very quickly? The technical advisory committee actually looked at the discussion about our CLRP, a very bigger version of that presentation. In addition, they discussed the smart scale applications going through and pre-application readiness. Ian started giving them some information about the potential draft legislation on the next transportation infrastructure funding bill. So they gave them a briefing. The short take of that is it looks like it is building bridges kind of focused, or at least building capacity focused. But right now it's still draft legislation, so anything and everything can still change. So that rounds out the majority of the TAC discussion. Moving on to the policy committee, again, smart scale with the big kind of discussion item there. They also discussed the raise grant applications and funding items because the Interstate 95 project was being pulled off from the raise grant application, mostly due to basically resources constraints on managing a project for VDOT. While the river crossing, because it was a lot smaller of an ask, particularly when we cleared it out, the engineering component was put forward and was submitted. So there was discussion on that. Lita, you provided an update on the complete streets process. And generally speaking, that was a very efficient meeting. Again, they had the smart scale, the survey discussion as well there. There were some questions. So that rounds out the policy committee, and I want to make a special notification for y'all that the March meeting of the policy committee will be in this room. But put it on your calendars and agenda that the April meeting will be in Spotsylvania. They'll be at their what is it? Yeah, the Community Development Conference Room on the first floor of their main Merchant Square building. So if you're familiar with Spotsylvania Courthouse, it's going to be located and hosted by the county there, much like one of our previous policy committee meetings was hosted by Stafford County. So, and I'll leave it at that.
I wish I would have known that earlier on the Stafford meeting. So I didn't know it till like the night before.
It's all right, nothing happened, Joe. I was there.
I was, but I run the Employee Stafford Facebook page, and I would have put it out there earlier.
So, next item is member reports. Any reports?
I do want to say, has anybody been on Courthouse Road between
Which courthouse?
between
6:30.
Thornburg and Spotsylvania High School?
Oh, yeah.
Pennsylvania courthouse.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess you're in Partlow, so you'll be on it all the time. But anyway, if you ever go on that road, whoever built the road did it in perfection. There's a lot of turns and twists on that road, but when whoever did the grade, they twisted it like this, and it's so much smoother than regular roads that aren't twisted. So just if you ever go on it, just check it out.
That's because there's going to be an F1 race there someday. So.
All those people going to Lake Anna, like the raceway.
Any other reports?
I was wondering regarding the survey, since it's extended to Tuesday, even though it's late and so forth, could the survey be turned into a PDF file that is non-responsive just so people could see the questions? And then put that up on the webpage.
How many responses have you gotten so far? Do you know?
We're either it's 1,059 or 1,060, so we're right up there.
Good.
And what was the number we were striving towards again for that? There's a term for it in statistics.
Statistical significance.
Yeah.
Depends on what you want your confidence interval to be, but for our region, there's two numbers. One is 334, and the other one is like 1,060. So
and do we
right bang on there?
So. Okay. Do we also account for like if X amount of people in Spotsylvania versus Stafford did it, so versus like other localities, or it'll be just like, nope, this is the whole region. So
one, it's a so okay.
By zip code again.
We can have a longer discussion if you want to start to talk about kind of survey methodology, but we do have folks, we do request zip codes for folks to report it. We do try to get a generally a representative sample. I should back up. Not the statistical representatives. We try to look and say, you know, if Fredericksburg is doing 60% of the responses, we know that we probably have an outreach issue, or something else is going on. We do have with even the self-reporting zip codes, folks get it wrong. So we do have that. We do kind of, it's not, the error rate isn't quite that bad, but it's something that we pay attention to, but we look at it as it's the regional voice. In some projects you might have, because it's located in say Stafford or so you're going to have a disproportionate response from the localities if it's a survey response for that. For the general surveys, it tends to fall along the population, maybe with a little bit more representative of the Fredericksburg area in comparison to the Garrisonville area. If we say Fredericksburg, they kind of tune out a little bit because they're like, I'm not driving that far south. 95's terrible. They got there. But if it's Garrisonville specific, you might see a little bit more of a drop off from the Fredericksburg area. So you do see a little bit of regional preference or local preference, but generally speaking, it's self-reported. We try to hit all the jurisdictions. We try to hit outreach in every single locality. Try to hit, like, say, major employers. There might be a little bit of employer bias to a lesser extent happening, just because we do reach out to the hospital, we do reach out, like, to the university, we reach out to Geico. So usually that, like, area has a little spike just because we reach out to the large employers versus it's harder to reach out in a mass approach to mom and pop stores. Although we, like, asked Joe to say, hey, can you please send out the survey to your Facebook group? So if you have that kind of outreach, we will reach out. So I think Joe probably got like 2 or 3 emails from Ian and myself saying, hey,
Yeah.
by sharing, I know we probably bombarded because we didn't talk about that we're both going to reach out to you, but
No, and I want to thank Joe because Joe put it out everywhere. It was every Facebook page that he could think of, I believe. So thank you.
Awesome.
part of our success in that.
Okay, so next item is future items. I think I heard transforming rail in Virginia.
I'll bring in a large rail discussion. I'll try to do a survey and then I'll keep it relatively short and constrained. And then if you want me to do deeper dives on other specific items, I'm more than happy to do that. If you want to have a deep dive into automobile dependence, I will gladly dust off my dissertation on that. So,
Sounds like
yeah.
that. They have some passion in there.
Yes, it's human services.
Yeah, and then the next item, that might be good, and might be something good to put on there too. Then we also talked about FAMPO complete streets and the transportation survey and community preference update. Anything else that we might want to have for a conversation?
Mr. Rupert, I'll move we adjourn.
Yeah,
Second.
He's not here to second.
let's go. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.